Welcome to the Next Up podcast. I am your host, PC747. This podcast is dedicated to talking about the latest news and trends regarding consumer tech, particularly smartphones. I started this podcast back in March, a year after starting my blog, thenextup.com. You can find this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and my website. I started this podcast because I wanted to have a platform to be able to share my interest in tech. Now, how is my podcast different from any other Android podcast out there? Well, I try to cover a wider variant of topics. Yes, Android is my primary theme, as I talk about Android news and what's going on surrounding the Android community. But I also like to cover some Apple news, as well as venture out to cord cutting or any trending topic or entertainment, as well as anything dealing with tech. More importantly, I try to fashion my channel, as well as anything I do, whether it be blog or YouTube, to focus on those that are kind of new to the community. You may have just picked up an Android phone, you're trying to get started in this community, and you feel like things are going too fast, and you wish someone would slow down and explain things to you. And that's what I try to do, to take my channel and gear it toward explaining kind of where we at with not only Android, but just technology in general. So you feel like even though you may have jumped on late, you can jump on and feel confident sharing what you know. So for today, the big topic that we have to talk about is Huawei. I know everywhere you turn on the news, they've been a big talk. And we really got to go ahead and jump on how we got to this point. And when I started preparing, to talk about this topic, I started doing some research. And like a lot of people out there, you hear about the sanction placed on Huawei where U.S. companies can, provide any software support or hardware support. And you want to know, okay, where all this come from? And I'm going to go ahead and break that down. And let's go ahead and get started talking about how we got here, where Huawei may go, and kind of, give you an idea of just the background of Android and the whole story that led us to this point. So about 6 years ago, Huawei has been suspected of using technology to spy for the Chinese government. I'm pretty sure you heard about that. There have been reports that, your Huawei or phone may be a tool for providing, information to the Chinese government. But there may be some validity to that. And I'm pulling this out of Reuters, as they wrote this back April 4th, before the sanctions were ever passed. And, according to them, the U.S. authorities actually had evidence that proved that Huawei had violated sanctions, as well as, committed some bank fraud. The accusation stated that Huawei CEO Ming Wanzhou defrauded HSBC Holdings PLC and other banks when they misrepresented their relationship with Skycom Tech Company Ltd. So Skycom Tech is pretty much suspected of being a front company operating out of Iran. Now, Huawei, look, they feel like we have to defend ourselves. And pretty much they said, look, we're not pleading guilty to this. Skycom was just a local business partner. But the U.S. authorities kind of would say that you're saying they're a business partner, but we're saying there's more going on here. You're using Skycom as an unofficial subsidiary to conceal your business with Iran. And our biggest issue with that is the simple fact that Skycom has been provided embargoed technology to Iran. And we know with the U.S., last year, they actually went after Xiaomi for something similar. And here, the authorities of the U.S. authorities said, we have evidence showing that you're basically doing this right now. As far as further evidence showing that, as Reuters wrote back in March, the U.S. had been tracking Huawei's activities, and it was getting information from electronic devices that, Chinese executives were bringing through airports. So they said that we actually have some hard evidence proving our case. So when you take all these accusations of Huawei, possibly using their technology as a way to spy on the U.S. government and U.S. citizens, on top of the trade war currently going on with China, and you can't be surprised that we're here. Now, let's go ahead and give you an idea of what this ban entails, just in case you jumped on late. So the ban pretty much prevent all U.S. companies from providing aid to Huawei. And the reason why this hurt them is because now you got companies like Qualcomm, Intel, ARM, and Broadcom. These companies are just pretty much make the processors so that phones can actually use them. And now Huawei will not have these companies to help them build or supply processors to them or to their off-brand Honor. So if you take away the hardware or the ability for them to be able to build new hardware without having these chipsets, on top of Google pulling the software, and Huawei's in a pinch here, because Google came out later and say, look, we're no longer going to be providing the Play Store support to you guys, as well as allowing you to use any of our services, and we're not going to be updating your software. And at the time, they said immediately. But they would later back off and say, okay, we're going to give you guys like a kind of a 90-day period where we're going to go in and provide support for those who already paid money for your phones. But here on out, after the 90 days, or any new phone, we will not be providing support for you guys. And this put Huawei in a tough situation because, let's go ahead and look at the software front. You forget just about the hardware, because Huawei feel that, okay, we can build even if Huawei can build their chipsets and their hardware in-house, the software is going to be the challenge because, they're going to have to build the software from the ground. Now, they will be able to still use Android open source software because Android open source is just that. Anybody can use it. But to me, that puts Huawei in a situation where they're going back to what I say the stone age of Android because, yes, at a period of time, Android open source was very popular with Android. And it was popular because, where we was with Google software was nowhere near where we are at now. So during that period, Android open source or Android open source project, AOSP for short, was very relevant because it allowed people who have phones like, let's say, the Motorola Droid or any of your other Android phones, and it gave them administrative permission, which meant after you rooted your phone, you would be able to put custom software on there, changing, the layout of your phone. And why was this important? Well, like I said, not only was Android boring and bland, but it lacked a lot of features that some of the other smartphones were running. In fact, you actually had situations where you had one Android phone that had a feature where another one didn't. My example for this is you would have something like the Motorola Milestone, which was the international version of the Motorola Droid, and it would have pinch to zoom, but the Motorola Droid wouldn't. And people were like, okay, it's the exact same phone, exact same software pretty much. Why do this phone here have pinch to zoom and this one didn't? And you have other situations such as the Nexus 1, which again, was released not too long after the Motorola Droid, and it would come with brand new software with tweaks here that people are like, why is this not on my Motorola Droid? So with rooting and custom ROMs, people could take the software from like the Motorola Milestone, the Nexus 1, and kind of build it into a software experience and distribute it to Motorola Droid users. And this allowed for the community to grow in popularity because it allowed average users to be able to pretty much take the control of their phone in their hand. and kind of change the experience or build the experience around the way they wanted it. And this opened the door to a large community that became very popular very quick. And we started to see, as more and more devices got out there, and manufacturers were wanting to kind of answer these custom ROMs, especially when custom ROMs offer the ability to theme. And again, for those new to Android, what theming meant was what you see now, where you see with Samsung phones, HTC phones, you can go to a theme store and you download a custom layout and install it and update it. Well, early in Android, you didn't have that option. So in order to be able to theme for a lot of people, you had to rely on custom ROMs to do that. And with these custom ROMs, it allowed you to pretty much change a lot of the look of your phone. So you look at now where you pull down your notification shade and you see you got a black notification shade, or you can change the color of it. Well, at one time that wasn't the case. And this gave people that ability to do that. And it was something that was very popular. So again, for a lot of manufacturers to kind of, counteract that or to kind of answer that, they try to up their game by, changing the UI and, adding more, as they say, their own features. But unfortunately, when they were doing that, their custom UI added a lot of bloat to it that kind of slowed down the performance of the phones. And since we didn't have the hardware capabilities that we have now, phones suffered. And a lot of people are like, look, you're pretty much trying to shove down my throat your experience versus allowing Android to be what it's meant to be, where me as a user can choose my experience, not you choose it for me. And that opened the door for AOSP ROMs, that gave users a vanilla experience of Android with the ability to be in charge of what tweaks they wanted to add versus allowing someone else to do that. And a couple of developers that were popular during this time were CyanogenMod, AOKP, Dirty Unicorn. These were a number of AOSP ROMs that, gave people an answer to Modal Blur, TouchWiz, and some of these other interfaces that people didn't like because they, again, felt like it slowed down the performance of their phone. And this software, was a constant work in progress. Now, as popular and exciting as ROMs were, there was a drawback. And the drawback was this. When you download a custom ROM, it may have bugs. In fact, it wasn't unheard of to have that. We actually had ROMs named Bugless Beast because of the fact that it was, picking on other ROMs that was full of bugs. But you would download a ROM and everything would be fine, and then you go try to take a picture of, let's say, a helicopter flying by. You go to open your camera, next thing you know, it's force closing. And this was kind of the situation that a lot of people, didn't like with Android ROMs was just, they may fix one thing but break another. So you constantly had to go back and constantly update your software, which meant people were updating their phone, if it wasn't once a week, once every other week, to sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And, at the time, when people were excited about ROMing, this was awesome, but over time, this would become time consuming. And especially when you at work, you got things to do, you didn't feel like chasing ROMs in order to fix your problem. But this is where you went because there were a lot of things in Android that was lacking that we do have now. And before I continue on, one thing I want to say is not only did you just see the software experience as far as the themes and the ability to run a cleaner version of Android with your own tweaks, but you actually had apps that were built for those who were rooted that now is baked in Android that wasn't baked then. An example of this is when you now buy a new Android phone, you put in your information, it will download your previous setting for your backed up phone to the server. Then you can install your apps. And then your apps will then pull from that servers your data so that you basically continue on where you left off with apps and games. Well, this was not the case with Android back in a day in 2009 up to, I would say, 2014 maybe. So for a lot of those that rooted, we have the option of using apps such as Titanium Backup and My Backup Pro. And this allowed you to save your data such as games and apps so that when you bought a new phone, you didn't start from the beginning. You can just download that same backed up data on your new phone and continue on where you left off. Or if you did have to do a factory reset on your phone, same thing. And this made for setting your phone much faster. Because again, before then, you had to download each app one by one by one by one, and then, you would lose all your data. Where My Backup Pro and Titanium Backup, you can click a button and it'll automatically download as well as install the previous software so you can continue on. And it made setting up your phone much faster. Now again, with Android now, it's improved to the fact it's already baked in, but that was not the case then. So this would lead a lot of people to turn to the ROM community and AOSP ROMs because it gave you the features that you did not have in Android now. But like I said, for a lot of people, they knew if you was to install a ROM, you may run into issues such as bugs. Now, as Google continued to grow over the years and get the software better, we relied on ROMs less and less. In fact, you could say that what was the final nail in the coffin, at least I would say, is the fact when Google opened up their software to allow you to install their beta software, this was the final nail because you already had a more polished software in the Pixel phones. It gave people the more updated UI, the better looking phone. You now have some form of ability to change from dark mode to light mode. And a lot of people are like, all right, here I get a lot of the features that drew me to the ROMs, but I don't have it to worry about a lot of the bugs that plague some of the ROMs, as well as constantly having to wipe my phone and reinstall the new ROM. Because anytime, let's say for example, you updated your ROM because they say this ROM developer put out this new ROM that was an update to their previous ROM. Well, they will always recommend that you wipe your phone completely, which basically was a factory reset, and then install it, which meant you had to spend the time to wipe your phone, install it, wait for it to boot up, and then sign in again and go through all that all over again. So every time you updated your ROM, you had to go through that. And you don't have to do that now with Android. It's just, you can update your phone and not worry about any of that. And a lot of people are loving that. So this is kind of where we saw AOSP or ROMs go. Now, as far as other manufacturers kind of gambling on AOSP ROMs, we kind of saw that with companies like Oppo, with the N1 and OnePlus, as they brought in CyanogenMod to try to supply that AOSP software for their phones. And as popular as the ROM community was then, they couldn't get the kind of support that they thought. At this time, Google was just too big. Their software would just continue to get better. And at this point, more people were starting to go or turn to Google software because it was starting to become the software experience that people had wanted on the Android phone that mirrored that of the iOS phones. Especially when you started seeing companies like Samsung really get their software up to where you got with the Note 2 and then, all the features packed in there. And it just continued to get more and more and more to the point where people ROM less and less. And the reliance on, these custom software got to the point where at one time where people sought this over Google because it gave you more than what Google offered, it's now the opposite. It feels like Google give you more than what you would ever get on AOSP ROMs. In fact, those that choose AOSP ROMs now would choose it mainly because they want to have less of the Google Plays and services. They want less of the Google software versus, more. So you have more features now, it feels like, when you go with stock Android. And a lot of the features that appeal to people back on the ROM community is already baked into the software and that you have now. So you don't need it anymore. Now, this whole history lesson of where we got with ROM AOSP is to wrap it up to say this. Now where we see with this open source project or Android open source is that it's not going to be able to provide people the same experience that they are come to enjoy with Android because it's going to lack the Google Play Store. and all of the apps and all the things that make it popular. You know, an example of this, is you look at Amazon. Their software is pretty much built on top of AOSP, but instead of using Google's Play Store, they're using their own. And yeah, people will say that when you have a choice between Amazon's Play Store and Google's, I'm choosing Google's. And you can say the same thing with Microsoft. Even though they didn't build on top of Android, they built their own software. When they try to build their own Play Store, they run into problems with trying to build their own Play Store from the ground up. And the point of this is this. Huawei is going to have to find a way to compete in this market with the Play Store that's going to be lacking all of your popular apps such as, Netflix, Amazon, Pandora probably, a lot of your music apps. Just you think of all the things that you have in your phone, all the apps you have in your phone. A lot of them are probably American companies: Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, all of these. So none of them are going to be able to be installed on this phone. And as far as Huawei's response is, well, we're going to build our own software, and we can build a app store from the ground up, or maybe seek someone for an app store. And that is going to have to be the response, but that's going to be challenging because you're going to have an app store that is, going to be lacking all the apps that you have, which means it's going to rely on a lot of the fake apps or the copycat apps. In fact, this is where I think Google finally saw the biggest improvement, is when they finally got their Play Store to the point where they rid of all the spyware, the viruses, all your copycat apps were gone, and they got it to the point where it's as strong as it is today. And we know that wasn't the case back when Android first started. So it took them almost a decade to get their Play Store to this point. And now you're going to ask Huawei to do this in a matter of months to try to build a Play Store that can rival that of Google and Apple without all of the support of your other developers. And this is going to be a big challenge. And, as much as they saying that, they think they can handle that, they got a software ready to go, they got a Play Store ready to go for customers, it's not going to be the same experience or nowhere near it. It's going to feel like, literally like a cheap phone for a lot of people. Even though the hardware is there, it's like, how are we going to be able to, get the same software experience? Now, I do think there may be ways around it, such as if they open the phone up where people can go get their own ROMs and install it and get it themselves. They can do that. And there are going to be a lot of backdoors that you can do as far as the ROM community. But our customers are going to want to do that, especially when you look at the price of these phones. Huawei phones are not cheap. They are up there with your Apples and your Samsungs. So you're not going to want to pay that type of money for a phone where you're going to have to go out there and build your own software and make your own way to make this work. And this cannot come at a worse time for Huawei because, they are on the verge of putting out their Mate X, which was believed to possibly be better than the Samsung Fold. And now they're putting out this big phone without the support of Google's Play Store. And you look at a number of phones they got out there, and Huawei's in a tough situation. As much as they may be playing tough to the community or their response, and we got a response. We're working on apps. We're working on a software experience. We're going to be all right. I don't think they're going to be all right. And this actually puts the community in a situation because there are a lot of people who own Huawei phones that are now going to decide what they're going to do. Because now, if you were to try to sell your Huawei phone, well, people know what's going on, so you're not going to get the same value that you think you're going to get. And yeah, even though Huawei, as big as they are, them being, I'll say, the second largest phone manufacturer outside the U.S. In fact, as far as the top three, had they had the carrier backing of some of these other manufacturers, you could argue they could easily be in the top three as far as phone manufacturers in the United States because of the popularity of their phone. And this company is going to have to find a way to continue on without any of the backing of a lot of the companies out there, and they put in a tough situation to try to have to respond to that. And the reaction to customers who own Huawei devices, are mixed, especially those who are from other countries. They're feeling like, the Google and all these other companies should not have, responded this way because, as they feel, the Trump administration have a problem with Huawei or because of how trade negotiations are going. They feel like they are pawns in the middle of this. And though I'm not going to, respond one way or another to that, as I don't want to get political, I can see where a lot of people are saying that, this do change the community in the fact that, what Huawei was as far as the smartphone landscape, it gave a big name company to provide competition to elevate phones to continue to get better. And now you're losing one of those manufacturers from being able to do that. And this will change the industry in a way. Now, how long this sanction will actually end up lasting, is still up for debate. We'll obviously keep up with that. But if this ends up going over a year or 4 years, and I say 4 years, not FOUR, but FOR for years, yeah, I think this will end up hurting Huawei in the long run. As much as people are saying they're a large company, they can rebound for this, I think this is going to be a problem, and I don't know if they're going to be able to kind of have the same response as far as being able to continue on being where they're at, without the support of all these different companies. Because like I said, there are just too many people that are pulling out. And it continues. As I go over the news of the week, Vodafone and EE, they said they're going to be pausing the launch of not only the Huawei Mate X, but Huawei's 5G phone in the UK. That was presented by Android Police. So yeah, there you go. More and more companies are pretty much saying we're kind of throwing our hands up and stepping back and letting Huawei deal with this. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Chinese government continue to respond and how Huawei respond, and if we would ever see a resolution with this. What are your thoughts on this whole sanction thing? I'm out.